Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nugget News. In this video I want to cover another exciting project you guys have been requesting, and that's Elastos. Now these guys are trying to rebuild a decentralized internet from the ground up with what they're calling a smart web. So we've seen the issues that have arisen from centralized censorship layers of the internet which it is currently built upon. So everything from governments creating the Great Firewall of China to collusion between the tech giants shutting down individuals' accounts, suppressing certain narratives. Individual internet service providers can now choose to limit bandwidth for websites that they don't like. We also see those terms and conditions you have to agree for all the applications these days so they can take ownership and on-sell your personal data. So they're trying to solve all these issues as well as solve the issues that currently face different blockchains and scaling. So Elastos is the safe and reliable internet of the future using blockchain. For the first time, we're going to create a safe environment where web-based decentralized applications are detached from the internet. So you don't always have to be communicating with the internet to run an app necessarily, or you don't always have to be on a blockchain to do all the computation. They want to move all that computation to the sidechain and have a web of smart devices all communicating and talking to each other. You can earn Elastos by contributing your resources and creating and so on. I'm going to dive into exactly how this all works because I believe this is a very exciting project. Now, this has been around for a number of years now. So we see here the founder, Rong Chen, left Microsoft in 2000. So that's 18 years ago now, working hard in the background, a lot different to some of these white papers that were thrown together last year. In 2013, investment from Foxconn into the open source Elastos project. And then last year, obviously, it all really took off like a lot of things in the space. We see this relationship with Bitmain through Jihan Wu, with Neo as well. And really focusing on funding community projects is something that I'm going to be talking about, which I really like that they're doing. So last year they had their ICO raising 94 million, a lot of excitement and widely spoken about at the time. I want to talk about the tech that uses merge mining with Bitcoin and how they're trying to ensure safety and reliability through a hybrid mechanism, piggybacking off Bitcoin for the security, but also using delegated proof of stake and utilizing sidechains to push that computational and storage, all those applications running off the main chain so it doesn't get congested, slow and expensive, which we see with the likes of Bitcoin and Ethereum at times. So very large team, over 100 members. I'm sure this is always growing and they're going to need a big team to pull off some of their ambitious goals. So I mentioned Rong Chen and Fen Hang. They're probably the main two to look into if you're interested. Developing an ecosystem fund. I'll talk about a lot of the news they've had recently at the end of this presentation. And obviously big advisors are important. So Jihan Wu, I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of that relationship with Bitmain. Neo in some ways is a competitor, in some ways they've got a good relationship trying to build a universal smart contract language with Neo and Ontology and Elastos all being able to communicate. And Elastos has always had a mission of interoperability as well. So at the moment, a few of the main issues that they're trying to address, as I've said, these are the issues that all blockchains are trying to tackle. Storage and speed, bugs in smart contracts, costly to use the network and use the computational power of the main chain. Junk data, you've got to download the entire blockchain to run a full node for Bitcoin and Ethereum. Lack of flexibility if you're not familiar with individual coding languages for certain blockchains, and obviously security. So a lot of web-based apps are prone to these denial of service attacks, man-in-the-middle attacks. We see ICOs getting hacked and so on. So they're really trying to secure it in a number of different ways. So how are they going to do all this? What's the Elastos solution? Well, the main chain handles value transfer and storage of all the hashes, all that information that comes encrypted from all the different side chains and applications. So everything else, all the smart contracts and side chains, they're running, doing their own thing. Even sidechains can create their own sidechains, as they say here. But the merge mining hybrid proof of work that piggybacks off Bitcoin is really the thing that's securing the main chain the most. Sidechains can use whatever consensus mechanism they want. That's a big draw card there. Byzantine fault tolerance, proof of stake, proof of work. And that's going to encourage a lot of interoperability and attract more developers to the space as well. So what are the main 4 pillars of the Elasto smart web? So as I said, picture this smart web as all these digital devices and applications all talking to each other and contributing resources. So the main Elastos blockchain establishes trust by giving all the nodes and players and applications IDs, digital IDs as they're calling them, and then making sure that they're, authenticating, or however you want to describe it, but making sure that's the owner of that data. Are they permissioned to do that, or is that trusted, and so on. So I'm going to dive into that a little bit more in the end, but that's something that's pretty unique to them that I really like. So Elastos runtime, and this is really important. So a lightweight operating system, so allowing applications to run on individual mobile devices or PCs, and the developers can choose what's going to be best. Do I need my application to be running and communicating to the blockchain frequently, or even the internet itself? Can it run on a phone? Can it run on this lightweight client that's written in C++, a pretty common language? Again, all these things are enabling more developers to come and contribute, because developing apps that don't necessarily have to be talking to the internet all the time. It's a pretty exciting concept versus all these dApps that we see, on Ethereum and EOS that are always going to be running on the blockchain. The software development kit, they've already got an MVP out, which is pretty cool. As we said, allowing developers to plug in, use their range of tools to easily onboard existing applications or build their own, and so on. And finally, Elastos Carrier. So that web of all devices talking to each other. I'm going to talk about some of the ways they're going about this, because it's different to something like Nexus, which is using cube satellites and mesh networks and ground stations to establish their coverage to use their internet. They're really trying to put out as many of these carrier nodes as possible to have good coverage to allow that traffic and talk to each other between all these different devices. Now, finally, I just want to thank Gandhi. I reached out to him as one of the admins in Telegram, and he pointed out that this is so important, the Elastos carrier and runtime environment that creates the ability for these applications to run offline. That's a really big point of difference to these other projects out there, and it prevents these man-in-the-middle or denial of service attacks, making them less prone to hacking by giving them the ability to run offline. So pretty cool stuff there. Always awesome when you're researching a video to have those admins assist you. So let's talk about merge mining. Bitcoin, proof of work, it uses a lot of energy, but it is the most secure mining algorithm in the world. So merge mining is an opt-in system. So anyone that's mining the SHA-256 algorithm for Bitcoin or other similar coins can opt in and say, yeah, we'll mine Elastos as well. And if you're already spending that energy and you've got the hardware, you might as well earn some Elastos as well. That's the thinking behind all this. So at the moment, they've got the partnership with Bitmain. Does that make it more centralized and prone to, being at the will of what Jihan Wu and Bitmain want to do? Look, maybe, but in terms of securing the network and piggybacking off Bitcoin, it's not a new concept. We've seen Komodo do it and some other projects. I think the importance of proof of work and how secure Bitcoin is going to be a theme that continues to be of the utmost importance going forward, as people recognize that Bitcoin, the most secure proof of work system, is far better than some of the other smaller proof of work competitors that we see getting 51% attacked and so on. So Elastos itself is that hybrid, using proof of delegated proof of stake in there as well to get the best of 2-minute block times, fast transactions and finality, more efficient, but also piggybacking off Bitcoin as a reference point is probably the easiest way to think about it in terms of security. So let's dive in and talk about sidechains. Now, they've got a completely separate white paper if you want to deep dive into this sort of stuff, but I've described that main Elastos chain there. And then we have these side chains. So we want to push the computation and storage and all the unnecessary things that bloat the main chain. We want to push that off to the side chain, and then they can have their own side chains. And we've seen Ethereum start to talk about this with Plasma as well. This is slightly different. You can have any consensus mechanism running your sidechain, which is really great, but also friend chains. So Ethereum or ERC20 based tokens will hopefully be able to communicate with these Elasto sidechains as well. So interoperability, If we want this to be the web where everything's running on, you're going to need to be able to talk and communicate to other blockchains. Next up, let's dive into some of the big news that I've had recently. So $5 million grant to MIT, research supporting community-driven projects. I absolutely love to see this sort of stuff, particularly if you've raised a lot of money. Partnering with WeFilm Chain, so giving content creators the ability to be directly rewarded and peer-to-peer. We know how much of an issue we've seen people complaining about, censorship and not getting paid enough on YouTube and so on. So I definitely think we're going to see a move away from these centralized apps and websites in the future as well. So great to see that partnership there. Next up, we've got a big board member that's joined them recently. So Dr. Li Xing, if I've pronounced that correctly, from Stanford Uni, heavily involved in the medical industry. And this is an industry that's ripe for disruption. I've covered this. I've put my pharmacy hat on and spoke about some of these exciting projects. But getting someone of his caliber on board shows me that they're looking to build dApps and dive into that medical industry, which is great to see. Next up, we've got the alpha that's out now for the Elastos chat app. So in China, the censorship we see of WeChat, banning of Telegram in other countries, being able to have this decentralized peer-to-peer app to not only chat but send value and so on in the future is just awesome to see this running already. It's pretty unstoppable once we have a large network of nodes running on the Elastos internet, the smart web. How are they going to run all this with all those carrier nodes? As I mentioned, things like these smart TV boxes. So already 230,000. Now, we don't want these on shelves gathering dust, guys. We want these out in the real world. Some of these lesser known companies that are creating these, it's great to see they've got a target of 1 million active carrier nodes. That's starting to get some decent coverage. So if we can have those million TV boxes, then we have smart devices like phones, your computer, you can contribute resources and storage and earn Elastos tokens. We're starting to see now how they can build this smart web. Some pros and cons, some things that I don't necessarily love about the project. So the big ICO, $95 million, a lot of private equity and angel investors there as well. Now, on top of that, we've got an annual inflation rate of 4%. If there's lots of people using this and the ecosystem growing, that's fine. But at the moment, that's always bringing new tokens into circulation, which you don't want as a holder necessarily. 70% of the new tokens going to miners and then 30% to the Elastos Foundation. Now, I'll just jump back here and talk about that. So you can see here there's only 7 million currently in supply from the total of 33 million. So they put out some more details of this recently, what the hold times are, when they're going to come into circulating supply and so on. But yeah, that's the questions you should always be demanding of a project, guys. Transparency, how long until your tokens are going to be tradable, and so on. The next thing I wanted to touch on was the partnership. So as I said, Neo is a competitor, maybe Ontology, but they have that agreement and they want to work together. Other competitors are EOS, Ethereum. I spoke about, Nexus building that decentralized web, even Substratum. So there's different projects taking different approaches. Elastos is trying to set themselves apart with that ability to easily run projects on that lightweight client offline, they're not doing this computation on-chain. So while others are experimenting with how to best do it on-chain with delegated proof of stake like EOS and Ethereum trying to scale and do everything on-chain as well, smart contract execution, value, state, computation, all happening on the main chain there. So remains to be seen who's going to execute this the best, and it's all about partnership users and onboarding developers to build dApps on your blockchain. At the moment, Ethereum is still a leader, but there's some great things happening with Elastos. I think there's so much potential here. I would like some more information on their roadmap. It just sort of ends here in December, which is only 2 months away now. I don't think it's going to be finished and fully rolled out by then, so I'd love some more information about how they plan to expand in the future. Check out the Cyber Republic website. They really want to build this community where the Elastos token gives you a vote and a say in different things. It allows you to register your ID on the blockchain, opening the door to the ecosystem, as they say here, to acquire storage, buy and sell assets, resources, content, contribute your own resources to earn Elastos tokens, as I mentioned. So Elastos does have a wide use case. That's what we want. If we're investing in a token, we want it to be critical to the infrastructure and ecosystem of the underlying architecture. Finally, this one was really hyped up. I thought I didn't touch it. I've been very patient. I am looking to invest and add this one to my portfolio. But like a lot of projects that were just huge, had that China factor, and there's a risk to reward there. So we see Neo running really hard, but then also pulling back really hard when we have fears about what may happen in China. So China has that that sort of mystery factor, that X factor, can be your best friend or your worst enemy. So I'm always mindful when I'm looking to invest, but now that it's pulled back a lot, you know, all the YouTubers were talking about it. Blockchain Brad's done a lot of videos about this if you want a more technical deep dive. So thanks for that, Brad. But as I said, this got well over $90 on some exchanges in February. So it wasn't even around in December, Jan, when the hype was at its max. So considering it's down, you know, over 90% when it wasn't even around at the peak of that hype, you know, that's where I'm looking to enter. When all the hype's died down, is it a good project with a good team making good project? Yes, I believe it is, and it's pulled back. So I'll be looking to, you know, dollar cost average and add this one to my portfolio going forward. I hope you've enjoyed that review, guys. Let me know what you think of Elastos below. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, share these videos around, and thanks for tuning in, guys. Cheers.